My name is Jennifer Hoffman. I'm the City County Manager in Broomfield. And we're going to begin tonight with a debrief of the January 5th fire that occurred in Boulder County. We feel fortunate to have learned not only from the tragedy from the Marshall Fire, but from the floods in 2013. It seems that Broomfield continues to be kissed with tragedy, but it doesn't continue. It hasn't come into our boundaries to where it required a significant aftermath response. While we hope that that continues to be the case as we enter into the fire season, it doesn't seem like there's any gap between non-fire season and fire season. It's an unfortunate reality that we find ourselves in. Over the past years, having learned from what it means not only to collaborate, but cross-functional jurisdictions have various methods of communication, various methods of response. In Broomfield, we find ourselves to be fortunate, not only being a city and county, we like each other, but our partners from our law enforcement, from the PD, and from North Metro Fire, we have decades of long-term, deep, engaged relationships. So when you call one of us, essentially, you're calling all of us. We've had a multitude of drills. We've had multitudes of conversations, break fix, modifications, trial and error, and learning. And the January 5th Haystack Fire was no different. My partner here, Chief Doherty, will talk more about that as with his team in just a moment, but always an opportunity to learn. We can always improve. And I speak from a staff perspective in CCOB that our methods of communications are always consistently, we want to see that all feedback is good feedback. It helps us grow to become stronger in our communication and what that means throughout CCOB, not just for fire, but also for any emergency that we may face. And tonight's conversation isn't just about one incident. It's about helping the community understand how the systems are designed, how we respond, how we make decisions, how we communicate, what you all can do before, during, and after any kind of emergent event. We're hoping that at the end you leave with three things, three primary things, and we'll check in at the end before we do our Q&A. We want to set clear expectations of staff and of residents, trusted information sources. I know there's a lot out there about the Ring doorbells and Nextdoor, a multitude of alarm signups. Depending upon where you are jurisdictionally, we're going to cross that tonight as well. Not all information makes it better. So we've really honed in after the January 5th to have one point of information for all of you to continue to go to, and that really has been the building blocks between PD, emergency management, CCOB communication, and North Metro Fire. So when one triggers information, it's automatically and systematically and simultaneously fed so that all four of us are delivering the same information at the same time. So the reliance from a trusted source, we can continue to build that for all of you. And we want to make sure that you all leave with practical steps. Again, what you can do before, what you need to do during, and what after looks like. Our emergency manager, director of operations, but emergency manager lead, Clay Shuck from CCOB, will be walking us through that. So we always say in CCOB that uncertainty creates anxiety. It does for me as an individual as well as for a leader. And clarity promotes confidence. Confidence in our systems, confidence in our teams, and confidence in each other. So the shared message tonight is that public safety is everyone's responsibility. We don't ever want to rely on one source more than another. It really is a cross-pollination of opportunities for all of us to work in unison oftentimes and to trust what the other agency, unit, or organization is telling us how they're making decisions and how do we activate with a moment's notice. Knowing where to find the accurate information is the basis of a significant portion of what we're going to talk about tonight. And before we go to operations, it's important to recognize who's here tonight. I want to thank the staff that had put this together, the residents that helped inform. I don't know if Mayor Quinn, former Mayor Quinn is here, but I don't have my glasses on, so council knows that I don't wear my glasses or contact when I do these kind of things, so I don't. Oh, there you go. He helped inform some of these questions and approach for us tonight, so we're grateful for that. North Metro Fire is here this evening. I'm going to introduce my partner, Chief Doherty, in just a moment, but our sheriff / police chief, it's always a city-county portion of it, Chief Hempelman, who is our champion for public safety, is also here tonight. She'll be walking through several slides. And as I said before, our emergency manager lead / director of operations, Clay Shuck, is also here from staff, along with a whole host of, I think the first 2 rows are all North Metro Fire. It's my pleasure to introduce Chief Doherty, and I'll also be paying attention to the presentation, help with the Q&A at the end. Feel free to address those questions to any member that's on the stage tonight, and or if we don't have the answers, we'll certainly get back to you and we'll capture your name, number, and information. And again, our heart is full that you all made the decision to spend the evening with us tonight. We're very grateful. Thank you. Chief Doherty.
Does this one work too? Nice. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Doherty. I'm the fire chief for North Metro Fire Rescue. It really is great to look out here. We didn't know. We were joking a little bit. Is it going to be 15 people tonight? Is it going to be 500? This is an amazing turnout. And to really echo a lot of the points of City and County Manager Hoffman, this is everybody's responsibility. Safety is. And to see all of you here, to be able to spread the message that we're talking about tonight. It really doesn't just stop here tonight with one town hall, but our continued effort to ensure that everyone feels comfortable and willing to approach us with the questions and to know that they can get the answers from us and feel very confident in the fire department, the police department, and the city and county that you do have. I'm very proud to be in the position that I serve in right now. I'm very thankful to be part of a fire department that takes not only fire suppression seriously, but wildland fire suppression so seriously. My formative years in the fire service were in California, and I had a lot of experiences with significant fire. And then coming to Colorado and knowing that there's little bits and pieces of that, but watching what the Marshall Fire was, not only to me professionally, but also me personally, it really helps me reflect on what the community is experiencing during these episodes of significant fire, even when it's not in our district boundaries. So tonight is really about that, to talk about what this fire was, what we did to respond to it, the things that we have done since the Marshall Fire to really enhance our response to wildland fire mitigation, to wildland fire response, all of those aspects coming together tonight, and then what we can do as a community to ensure that homes are well protected, that we're doing the right things to ensure that fire spread is reduced where we can, and that to knowing that there is a great deal of confidence in our abilities to protect the community when there is an incident. So before we start tonight, I do want to do a few introductions. Our board members are here, 4 of our 5 board members. President of our board, Rich Kondo, is here tonight. Director Liz Law Evans is here. Director Peter Belair, and Director Dick Miller. So I really thank them for being here tonight to show their appreciation for what we're trying to accomplish. And then also I'd like to really echo what it has taken to be here tonight. It seems like a simple thing to put on a town hall, but really the effort that went into this to ensure that we're doing this in the right way, I think it's a testament to the relationship, the strength of our partnership with the City and County of Broomfield. I'm very grateful to our partners with the city, to the police chief, Anaya Hempelman, and to City and County Manager Hoffman. I'm going to introduce now my team that I'm very, very thankful to have here to speak to you tonight about all of this. Deputy Chief Matt O'Leary, our Operations Chief, will speak in just a minute. Lieutenant Bill Castingway, who was there that day, will also speak. Our PIO is here tonight, Katie Converse as well, and our Emergency Manager, Michelle Dealand. Again, there's probably many questions that will come after this, many inquisitive minds in the audience, and we're so grateful to have all of you here. If we don't answer all the questions tonight, remember this is just one piece of an ongoing concept where we're always looking to advance, to get better, to learn. Every chance we have, we take that as an opportunity for growth. So I'll bring up Deputy Chief Matt O'Leary.
I'm not going to use it, but I can make it. Thank you, Chief. Good evening, everybody. Matthew O'Leary, Deputy Chief of Operations for North Metro Fire Rescue. Glad to see so many of you here tonight, and grateful for your interest, your participation, and your partnership in public safety. The image that you see on the screen is an image from that incident on January 5th. So what I would like to do is provide an overview and a chronology of the events that transpired that day involving the response to and mitigation of this grass fire. Following that, our wildland team lead, Lieutenant Bill Castingway, who was present on scene, is then going to discuss some of the application of strategy, tactics, and operations that brought this to a successful conclusion. And we do consider this operation a success, and we're very proud of the decisions and the actions of our personnel and partners that day. But as you can see, it was a dramatic event. I mean, that's an alarming image, and it was an alarming incident. It developed quickly, it was fast-moving, and was also brought to a very rapid conclusion, for which we're thankful. So we prepare for this type of incident. We've built systems to position apparatus and qualified personnel, and we train regularly for this type of incident. And we have the ability to muster a robust response with a single call that provides manpower, equipment, and overhead supervision at the site of the emergency and in support roles at the department and county level. So the next image that we'll see, we'll use this. So this is the outcome of the fire as depicted through some post-incident drone imagery and analysis overlaid on a more familiar and easily viewed Google map by our data analyst and our planning captain, Matt Young, who's here tonight as well. So the fire started at this fire icon here, the point of origin, on the kind of southwest corner of this plot of property. And it was initiated by a spark from some agricultural machinery operating in the area, a combine harvester, as we understand specifically. That spark into these dry, light, flashy fuels started this fire, and it moved in the direction of the prevailing winds behind it. So it moved from that point of origin through the dry, flashy fuels and cornfields, and you can even see kind of the vestige of the corn maze that they plow in every fall in that area there. And it was steered by the crews and their interventions into this corner of 287 and Dillon Road, where it was met by the aggressive tactics applied by responding crews, particularly some of the North Metro Fire personnel that were on scene. So North Metro Fire provided a substantial response and coordinated closely with Boulder County agencies for the management of that incident that took place entirely within the city of Louisville and in the county of Boulder. But those relationships and that system of automatic and mutual aid is really important to us and something we're always working to enhance in recognition of the fact that fire, floods, and other large-scale emergencies don't observe those jurisdictional boundaries. So this incident initiated with a call for a smoke investigation, and the city of Louisville initially dispatched a single structure engine, this one indicated here in white, for investigation of that outside smoke. On approach and visualization of part of that first image that you guys saw, they recognized that there was something significant developing, so they made an immediate request for additional resources. And their response from the Boulder side included an additional 3 Type 6 brush trucks, so a little bit lower water capacity, but very mobile and very effective, and then 2 Type 3 larger brush trucks. A Type 3, if you saw the brush truck that we positioned outside of the auditorium here, that's a Type 3 brush truck. They also had a water tender for water supply in the absence of fire hydrants, and then some additional, a battalion chief, the fire chief, a battalion chief from the neighboring city of Lafayette, and a battalion chief from the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, a state agency, along with a robust police response as well to assist with traffic control and crowd mitigation. The timestamps that you see on the right are going to follow us through this presentation. And if we progress to the next slide, we'll show you the North Metro response. So, our fire station 67 is positioned at 96th and Dillon Road, just off of the Northwest Parkway, just off of the view of the screen here. So that engine 67, was in quarters at the time, and the captain, Cullen Lyle, noticed the smoke. So he called into dispatch and then immediately responded with his crew in their engine, accompanied by the brush truck that is stationed there with them. Upon, again, recognition of the volume of smoke and the conditions contributing to the fire spread, Captain Lyle also requested some additional resources. He requested a structure or a wildland response that included another 3 of the Type 6 engines, 1 of those Type 3 brush trucks, 5, what ended up being 5 structure engines, the big fire engines, and those are co-housed with a lot of these brush trucks. So the crew responds in both in order that they can join on the wildland apparatus, but still have their tools, water supply, equipment, personal protective gear available on those engines. We sent 2 battalion chiefs and a safety and medical officer, and then there was also a request for additional Division of Fire Prevention and Control resources. North Metro units approached primarily from the southeast, from the city of Broomfield, and they positioned on Highway 287. So this configuration and positioning of apparatus in combination with the Boulder units that were displayed previously is really shaping up nicely. We're able to place a battalion chief in a forward observation and supervisory position for operations that are being conducted right at the site of the fire, and then stage our apparatus thoughtfully along Highway 287 there. So we'll see then a picture of the combined response of Louisville, Lafayette, Boulder County agencies, and North Metro Fire. So I think this is a pretty impressive display of just fire units. We appreciate the police department's response and their assistance in the incident, but we removed their units here for sake of clarity. So everything you're seeing there is the combination of the 2 slides I previously showed you. We're able to position a lot of units to mitigate the fire and then to receive the fire at its terminus there at 287 and Dillon Road. And provide a strong sense of overhead supervision and command and control with our 4 battalion chiefs, fire chiefs, safety and medical officers, and Division of Fire Prevention and Control resources. Our first unit arrived at 3:03. They found Boulder County units already in position and beginning their operations. Lieutenant Castaway is going to talk about some of the tasks, tactics, and strategies that they adopted to bring this fire under control. But from 3:03 until 4 p.m., when this fire was contained and the active progress and threat was done, was less than 40 minutes. So rapidly developing, rapidly progressing, and very rapidly brought to conclusion. So now that you have a sense of the overall response and posture of our operations, I'll invite Lieutenant Castaway up to talk to you about the strategy, tasks, and tactics that they performed.
Good evening. Lieutenant Castonguay, Wildland Coordinator in North Metro Fire Rescue. Thanks for being here this evening. I'm going to kind of walk through the strategy and tactics. Chief did a good job of laying out what it was and how we responded. I wanted to talk a little bit about preparation, right? So we don't just prepare the day of. We prepare weeks, months ahead of time. We continue to do this right now as we're speaking. So that morning specifically, if you can look up there, we have the weather conditions that you had. So you had 20-mile-an-hour winds that day, low relative humidity, and high temperatures, okay, with readily available fuel. So what that put us in is what's called a fire weather watch. So when we have a fire weather watch, we do brush truck following. So what that means is any response we have in the district, we bring a brush truck with us. So that way we're ready to respond if something like this happens anywhere in the district or outside. If it becomes a red flag, like tomorrow and the next day, you'll see our brush truck, which is outside, upstaffed additionally with additional red-carded, wildland certified personnel within your district to protect your district and serve. So that day, having that brush truck following in place allowed for a more rapid response. That morning, we had prepared during our briefing that if we had anything, we were going to send an army, right? What did you see up on the screen? You see an army. It looks like a battlefield, doesn't it? It's going to be hard to win that battle against all of us, okay? So as we got called in there, we also contacted DFPC, so our partners with the state, and looked to see if we can get any aircraft. So some of you might know or might have seen that we have a Firehawk, a helicopter, a firefighting helicopter up at our regional airport. It's a great resource to have, and it's right in our back pockets. All we have to do is ask for it. Okay, so that day, it was able to fly if we needed it. I contacted the battalion that runs that, and he's like, if you need it, we can get it. We didn't end up needing it, but we had it in our back pocket. Great tool to have, right? So, with that being said, when we responded in here, we came in on 287 and we saw that first picture. I respond all over the nation fighting wildland fire. I know what it looks like to see a well-established fire and one that's moving fast. I knew that day that if we weren't aggressive on that, we weren't going to catch it, right? It could have turned into a martial fire of sorts really quickly if we didn't engage and be really aggressive, okay? So we had a forward staging area, if I can get this to work, there it is, right on 287 there. On 287, so anytime we engage in a wildland fire, we build what's called a PACE model, okay? We have a primary plan, alternate, a contingency, an emergency plan. With that comes different tactics, different suppression, events that we pick, and then if it doesn't go that way, we back up to that alternate plan. We go to the contingency plan. We get resources coming in for the emergency plan. That's how this thing works. So that day, our primary plan was to burn right here off this service road and Dillon towards ourselves, and it was going to do, sorry, I'm just going to go ahead and go over here. So what we would do is mitigate the fuel out front of it, do a back burn, okay? By doing that, it gives us a larger fire break. We know 287 is a holding point for us. We know this. We pre-plan it. We do this all over our district and outside our community. So if an event happens, we can engage it and hold a strong point effectively. So that day, that was our primary plan. Do a back burn off 287, and when that fire approached, because as it was leaned over, we couldn't tell necessarily that the fire wasn't coming through that field. We knew that the field had been mowed down, but in an event like that with that kind of wind, sometimes it'll carry. What we don't want is those embers or fire to go over 287, and now we have the event where now it's encroaching on our district, our homes, our communities, okay? So we wanted to get better eyes. I jumped in the battalion car with one of the incident commanders and got our eyes on the fire. We noticed at that point that the fire had found a cache pot of fuel here, and it went in a northeasterly mode. That changes things for us, right? We kind of look at that primary plan. Now we're switching to the alternate plan because no longer are we going to burn off 287 to mitigate something that's not coming our direction anymore, right? So now we have to go to our alternate plan. Our alternate plan was to build what I call a catcher's mitt, okay? Anybody who plays baseball or softball will understand this. Catch something, catch a fire, right? We pinch it down to the smallest level we can to engage it with the most resources. That's what we did here that day. So We moved all our equipment to the corner of Dillon 287. We evacuated all the people that were stuck there, because you got to remember, at this time, that's a very busy area. So our police partners, they did a very good job of getting those folks out of the way, evacuating them out of there. And then we went ahead and burned that whole acre corner out, right there. It's about an acre. And what that does, that takes all the fuel out. So you have 20, 30-foot flame lengths moving at a high rate of speed, almost as fast as cars drive, right? It'll outrun you. But when it runs into no fuel, what does it do? It goes out, right? So now you look at that control time, right? That's how we got out in front of that. The only way we were able to do that is just preparation, right? That's what we do. We pre-plan these areas throughout our whole community. We have this established in place all over. So you're gonna see these type of tactics that are gonna be engaged. We're gonna engage quick, and hopefully we can bring it under wraps quickly. So understanding our PACE model, right? That was our alternate plan that worked that day. There was also a contingency plan built in, right? You see all these units here. These are what's called holding units. If you put down fire on the ground or you have a fire coming, you want to have units what you call holding. So what those guys do is they chase any type of spot fires that come over, or any type of fire that would have got established over 287. We had multiple units ready to engage on those fires as well. And the Firehawk in our back pocket with the FPC partners, okay? So you folks up on the hillside here, in Outlook, there's Whistle Pig, Pony Estates, all those subdivisions, right? We were thinking about you that day. We always think about you. We know where all our subdivisions are. We know the thresholds. We know when to evacuate, right? So that day, if it had jumped 287, that was our plan in our, when we were pre-planning that. If it jumps 287, we're going to evacuate those communities, right? But we're not just going to evacuate them and get you out of there. We want you out of there so we can get in there, right? So we would establish what's called structure groups, and we put a bunch of these type ones, big fire engines, up in your subdivision, doing point protection, structure protection. That's why you'll see us in your communities. That's what we're doing. We're just pre-planning and making sure we're ready. So again, with this fire, it went great, right? We were able to deploy the tactics we needed. Not every fire will go that way, but just know we have a plan in place and we have all the PACE models set up for you. So when you're kind of getting these, the hair's standing up on the back of your necks and you're wondering, should I go, should I not? Are these guys and gals responding? Know that we're doing it. Know that we're practicing. We're always trying to get better, okay? So that was kind of how we responded that day. I just wanted to let you know kind of what that looked like. We also did some mobile attack here, which means that we used water to keep this within its confine and dug some hand line there to keep it in that controlled area, okay? So just to know, this area right here, we know that this is mowed down after the pumpkin patch is gone, right? So that's kind of nice to know. That's a control feature for us. So as I'm driving around, even when I'm driving into work, all our guys are doing the same thing. We're looking around our district and understanding what's available fuel, what's not. We're doing that today. We do it all the time. So that day, we knew that that was going to be another control feature. So again, looking at that fire, it looked very scary. It was one of those for us. We're like, that's a big fire. It's one that can be fought if we get there quickly. We know the control features. So we were very thankful to have the opportunity to stop that, keep it from coming into the city and county of Broomfield. And it was a win that day, and we're going to keep growing off of that. We do lessons learned after action reviews to keep getting better, okay? Just wanted to mention before I go into this next slide in this video is that I want you guys to take action on this next video and come see us after the fact, ask some good questions, right? This is a partnership. We can't do this alone. The safer you are with your community, the safer we're going to be and the more able we're going to be to fight these fires and keep them small. Okay, so thank you for your time. This is going to be a video that will be available on our site as well for after this meeting.
In recent years, we've seen an increase in wildland-urban interface fires here on the Front Range. The North Metro Fire Rescue District, the City and County of Broomfield, and Broomfield PD have partnered together to bring you tips on how you can keep your residents and yourself safe in the event of a wildland-urban interface fire. Well, there's three components of a wildland or wildland-urban interface fire. Those three components are topography, fuels, and weather. Topography, obviously the lay of the land, the slope, that directly affects rate of spread for a fire and the intensity of a fire. If a fire's running uphill, it's going to be a lot quicker, a lot hotter than if it's backing down a slope, or even if it's on a pretty level grade like we have behind us. Those fires will just kind of creep along. The second component in a wildland-urban interface fire is the fuels. And if you look behind me, this is fuel model 1. It's a lot of prairie grasses. That's really the fuel model that we run into up here. The third component, which is the most unpredictable component, is the weather. And if you have any type of wind in an urban interface event, it's going to make that much more difficult to deal with. You saw that in the Marshall Fire. If that fire would have started a day earlier where the winds were much more subtle, that fire would not have done the kind of damage that it ended up doing. Now that we've talked about the three components of a wildland-urban interface fire, let's talk about some mitigation techniques that as a homeowner you can implement to hopefully make your home a little safer if one of these events occurs. The immediate zone is that 5-foot zone away from your house, which is the most important zone that you're going to maintain. Making sure that you don't have any leaf litter in your gutters. Making sure that you don't have any trash or leaf litter in your window wells. You make sure that your vents are screened off so we can't get embers inside there. You're going to make sure we don't have any dead shrubs around the residence. And really what we want to do is, as much as possible, use non-combustible material, rock, granite, crusher fine, things that aren't going to readily burn. A lot of homeowners like the beauty of mulch and bark, and they put that next to their foundation, but that causes problems. That will readily burn, it gets next to your siding, and it can ignite your house from there. So when we talk about the home ignition zones and that zone 1 being 5 feet from the foundation, really if you look at this home, they've done a really good job. They got non-combustible materials used to landscape it. The window wells are really clean. We have screens on most of the vents. This is a perfect example of what we want to see in zone 1. Okay, so as we come around this structure for that initial zone 1, the 5 feet from the foundation again, we see they got rock here, which is a good non-combustible landscape material, but we got a lot of down, dead, prairie grass in here, and it would only take an ember to start some of this and make its way up behind the siding to start this whole house on fire. And these are the things as a homeowner that we want you to mitigate. It's not going to take very long. Move that stuff away from the foundation so you don't have that problem in the future. And then we start looking at trees around the residence, and we want to trim those trees up so that we don't have ladder fuels that start on the ground that run to a tree that could cause your home to burn. Or the second portion of that is you start looking at the outside of your house. What's it made of? Is it wood siding? Is it stone? Is it a combustible material, or is it fire resistant? So another step in protecting your home is evaluating your deck. What kind of material is it made of? Is it made of a combustible wood, or is it the new Trex decking, which are, a lot of them are now fire resistant. As you start looking at your deck, do we have a lot of combustible stored under there? Firewood, we see that a lot. It's a fuel that will readily burn, will start your deck on fire and it'll burn your house down. If you look at your fencing, it's one of those fuels that it runs along the open space, it comes up the side of your house, and it ties into your house. Not just the Marshall Fire, but every other fire that you see is fences catch fire, they run up your property line, they tie into your house, and it's just another way to lose your structure. If your fence has been freshly stained and it's been maintained, it'll take a lot longer for it to ignite. If you look in this neighborhood here, they have the metal fences that run up to the houses. So while all HOAs don't allow that, it's certainly a lot safer technique in terms of a wildland-urban interface event than having wood fencing going and tying into your home. Another mitigation technique is to keep your landscape healthy. Make sure your grass is watered and green. The reality is green grass doesn't burn, healthy trees don't burn, healthy bushes don't burn. At the end of the day, if one of these wildland-urban interface fire events happens in your area, really the most important message from the fire department's always going to be, if you feel threatened or you don't feel safe in your home, you need to get out. There's no reason to stick around and see what happens. If you can get out safely, we recommend getting out. There's a lot of things the fire department can do, but if we're facing everybody leaving at the same time and we're trying to make it into a residence, that really is going to impact our ability to do our job.
Good evening, everybody. As has already been stated, just want to say thank you for taking the time to engage with us on an important topic for today. But as we look at our threat environment moving into the future, we know will only become increasingly important. Michelle Dealand, I am the emergency manager for North Metro Fire Rescue District. And I have the opportunity to talk with you all in partnership with Clay Shuck about how evacuation decisions are made. We know evacuations are a huge component. We got a lot of questions on what does this look like within the city and county of Broomfield? How are decisions made? What are multi-jurisdictional incidents comprised of, and how are we communicating? So that's what we're going to dig into in this section of our town hall discussion. What I want to start with is going back to Chief O'Leary and Lieutenant Castanway's image of all of those resources on that scene. You had resources from different jurisdictions, you had resources from different disciplines. You had fire, you had law enforcement, you had Lafayette, you had Boulder, etc. That can become pretty chaotic if you don't have a structure in place to organize, to develop a common operating picture, to determine leadership and objectives and priorities in the response. So how do we do that at multiple layers? We have something called the Incident Command System, or ICS. And I'm not going to dig into the depths of it. There are multi-hour classes you can take on it. But what's important to understand is that this is a best practice, nationally recognized system that's used all over the country in multiple disciplines that allows for a standardized structure for response, standardized terminology so we can talk across groups, and it allows for expansion and reduction of the incident. So if that incident were to have grown, it allows for the expansion or the scope of that to grow with it. So looking at this graphic up here, now this is a very simplified version of how we're structured to respond to an incident, but it's where the importance of where these components lie, what they're responsible for. The most important piece, in my opinion, and I'm in my tall heels, so maybe I can reach, but are these bidirectional arrows. That's our communication right there. So when we talk at the bottom, here's our incident, right? Incident fire. Tactical is what Chief O'Leary and Lieutenant Castanway talked about. For this incident, we had fire, also trained in EMS. We had law enforcement. Now, they may have two different objectives. One is traffic control, getting people off the roads. The other is fire suppression. But it's important they're communicating. So how do they do that? They take that incident command structure and they create something called unified command. They come together geographically and communicate. Here's what I'm working on. Here's what you're working on. Here's what's changing on the fire. What does that mean for law enforcement operations? And they work as a collective. That's at that tactical level. Secondary to that is more of that coordination, and this is more behind the scenes. So you probably don't see this, you may not have heard of it, but we have what are called department operation centers, or emergency operation centers, which is what Clay is going to talk about. North Metro has its own department operation center. So this was stood up just minutes after the fire started because we realized the threat with the wind and everything that was going on, that this could quickly expand and that these tactical elements may need support. So we set up our dock at North Metro Fire Rescue Headquarters. It consisted of myself, we had data analytics and our planning captain, we had chief, and we had some other leadership in the room to help with coordination of resources, situational awareness, information management, and more looking at those potentially longer term and strategic elements of the response. So it is both, what do these ladies and fellas need down here that we may be able to support if we get, especially into that contingency or emergency of the PACE plan, but also how do we support the citizens of the city and county of Broomfield? So what can be done to help mitigate, inform, et cetera, at that level? So it's a combination of things. I would argue the most important piece is our communication with our partners. So we were in almost immediate communication with and ongoing with the city and county of Broomfield, Clay and his team. What are we learning from the fire ground? What are we seeing? What are the recommendations from the fire crews on evacuation? What are any additional needs that they may be able to support that go beyond, excuse me, fire and EMS? So that was a relationship set up almost immediately and continued until the last crews were off scene. That is coordination. This, in addition to, was communicating with Boulder County, excuse me, as well as Good Samaritan Hospital, actually, because they were within the evacuation zone. So what you don't see on here is all of the liaising that happens across different partner types. Had this incident grown, you also would have seen between CCOB and North Metro Fire, a joint information system, which allows all of our PIOs to come together and do coordinated messaging. So there's some boxes missing, but this gives you the general idea of the hierarchy or infrastructure that goes on in support of tactical, in support of life safety. I will let Clay talk about the policy group side, but that is another layer of an incident management coordination structure that we would see in a similar incident.
Thanks, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. Clay Shuck, Director of Operations and Emergency Management Lead. I appreciate you all being here tonight. And like everybody said, this is a great crowd, so I appreciate that you're taking this opportunity to come and listen, and hopefully you take away some things that you didn't know prior to this event. Continuing to talk about the coordination and information sharing that occurs. So this is our structure within the Emergency Operations Center for the City and County of Broomfield. When a situation first occurs, what happens is the emergency management team starts to get notifications of things. With that, we start to then say, okay, what do we think we need? So do we think we need to do a shelter? Do we think there's going to be evacuations? When all those things start happening, there's coordination going across the city and county of Broomfield. It's getting a shelter staff set up, getting ready for that to occur. It's talking about what the potential would be for an evacuation. What other things do we need? Do we need water? Would we need food? So those are the type of things that the emergency management team starts working on right away. In addition to that, I notify the policy group and the CMO. So I let them know that, hey, there's a situation going on, you need to be aware of it, and here's where we're at right now. We mentioned the common operating procedure, or a common operating picture, and that's what that's doing when we're notifying everybody. We're trying to give everybody that same picture of the event as it's happening in real time. So once we would get to the point to set up an emergency operations center, there's a lot of steps that would have to happen in between. So Michelle talked a lot about what's going on the scene, the tactical part of it, that incident command post, and they're working under that unified command. As it starts to build out, and you heard about the resources, what resources do we currently have, and are we capable of providing those resources? If we get to the point where that resource ability is no longer within our capability, that's when the Emergency Operations Center becomes a very important part of the overall operations. To set that up, we would call in our incident support team. Those are the areas down here that says EOC chief, all these different section chiefs. They all have different roles that they would perform during emergency operation. See the plan, section chief, logs, finance, IT, and operation. Again, when we start to get to the point where we feel like we need that capability, this is the team that comes in place. This team is set up right now that we have 2 teams that can do 20 or 12-hour operation periods. We're working on a 3rd team to do another 12-hour operation period. So these folks would be in it for the long haul when we have an event happen. It would be something that's going to exceed probably that 2 to 4 hour period of an incident that we would pull them in. The other thing that happens during this is, as Michelle talked about, that public information portion, where we set up all the PIOs, make sure we're getting them together so that they're also they're all doing the same messaging, they're working together on that messaging, and that's the message that's going out to the community. What happens in the policy group is kind of a really important part of all of this. Within the policy group, there's going to be the city manager, legal, HR, IT, finance, and whatever department head we need in conjunction with whatever staff we need or liaison with the fire department in that policy group. At that group level, what they're really looking at is that 30,000 view of the incident. What is it going to take to resolve this? Do we need an emergency declaration from the city manager? Do we need to look at other priorities? What do we need to look at for staffing levels? Do we need to start calling people in? Do we need to start sending people home? So those are all part of what occurs in that policy group meeting. Working together overall as a coordinated group. And I think that's the most important thing to understand. None of us act independently. We all work together in a coordinated effort to make sure that we're trying to resolve this incident as quickly as possible. And if it is going to be a longer operational period, that we have the resources in place to make sure that we get it taken care of over the long road. One of the things that we did learn during this event, can you go to the next slide? Thanks. Was that we did not get an advisory statement out quick enough. We knew about the fire, we knew what was happening, but from everything that was going on, we all felt, because all the communication between us and our other jurisdictions with Boulder County, we knew that it was getting to the point of being controlled. So with that, and that's our fault, we kind of took that internally and said, okay, what do we need to do in the future to make sure that we're giving out at least an advisory statement so that everybody else can kind of have that same operating picture that we have of the event. So what we talked about in the future is looking at this type of advisory statement. Well, really, that advisory statement is just going to create awareness for everybody to say, hey, there's an event going on. We realize there's an event going on, and there's no impact to Broomfield at this time. And I think doing that's going to help people feel a little bit more secure about what's happening and understanding that that big smoke flume, yeah, it's going to continue for a little bit, but it's really not moving. It's where it needs to be, and it's almost to the point of containment. If we get past that, and like in this incident, if it would have started to pass 287, we would have looked at evacuation warnings and evacuation orders. Evacuation warning is just that. It's, hey, look, something's happening. There might be a threat to you. And if you need to, start preparing for that. Get your pets together. Get your paperwork together. Get your go kit. And if you feel unsafe, get going. Get out of there. If it continues to progress to the point where we feel like we need to tell people to leave, then it becomes an evacuation order. We're going to tell you there's an imminent threat to life and to safety, and that we need you to get out of the area. With that, and to be really clear about something, as you're leaving, we have a lot of fire units that will be coming in the neighborhood and a lot of police units coming in the neighborhood. So understand that as well. Don't expect every intersection to be blocked and controlled by PD. They've got other things they're doing at that point in time. They might be up trying to knock on doors to make sure people are out. They might have to get to an area that needs to be evacuated quicker. So just understand that you're not going to have that at every intersection, but that order's still in place, so get going. When we're looking at evacuations, we look at it in a few different areas. One is that tactical standpoint. Okay, the tactical is really the how. How are we going to evacuate areas? That's really looking at it from the big perspective of, look, we think this fire is moving in this direction. Here's the wind. Here's the fire conditions. And so then we're going to say, okay, the how is we're going to start looking at this particular area and be very tactical about that. The community side of that is the who and the why. And that's where it really impacts you. What is your neighborhood? If it is your neighborhood that we're doing a warning on or an evacuation order on, we want you to know that, and we want you to know that it's a warning or an order. Warning is going to tell you you've got a little bit more time. But that order is you need to leave now. Even if you don't have all your stuff together, you need to leave now. And the chief implementman is going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. Now, we do have a couple areas that you can go. We've got the Paul Durr Recreation Center, which is one of our designated evacuation centers. And then the Broomfield Community Center is our designated shelter. We have used it as an evacuation center also, but if we needed to shelter people long-term, that's where we would send folks. So if you have to leave and you don't know where else to go and you don't have a plan, you could go to either one of those places. Now, with that being said, if we haven't issued a warning or an order yet, you might walk in the door and say, hey, I evacuated from my house, and you might get a stunned look from the staff initially, but we'll get you taken care of, all right? We're not going to leave you hanging. So we've done this a few times. We plan for it. We practice it with our partners, so it's not something that staff's not aware of and can't do. We've done many of these, unfortunately, over the last few years where we've evacuated for different things, and the staff's gotten really good at it. So they might be shocked for a moment, and then they'll be like, okay, we got this, we'll get it taken care of. I think the other thing key here is, though, know before you go. And when I say know before you go, and you've heard this already about the shared responsibility, is know your neighborhood. You're going to know that much more intimately than we're going to know that. So know how to get out of your neighborhood. Know if they're doing road work all of a sudden in your neighborhood. Or you've got other crews and they're doing construction, and there's a big trash can or roll-off that's blocking part of the road, and you might not be able to go that way. Know those things about your neighborhood. Every time you drive to the store, think about, how would I get out of the neighborhood if I needed to? You know, how many of you have ever worked on opening your garage door without power? Good for you. Look at that. You know, think about those type of things, but know where you're going to go. And like I said, Chief's going to talk about this here in a minute, but have that plan ahead of time and implement your own personal plan. If you do not feel safe and there's smoke coming your way and you haven't got a notification from us, you're okay to go ahead and leave. It's better to do that and then to find out, hey, maybe I didn't need to do it, but hey, I had my plan in place, so it was great practice if I ever need to do it for real. But go ahead and take that opportunity to do that, and don't wait to hear from us. The typical time to get an evacuation notice out, either a order or a warning, is somewhere around 10 to 20 minutes into the incident. And that's typical across the board, because units need to get on scene, they're evaluating what's going on, and then those decisions start to be made. So again, if you have a plan in place and you're feeling uncomfortable and you don't hear it from us, please feel free to go ahead and move out of the area ahead of our evacuation or notice. I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle.
Thanks, Clay. So you saw that video earlier. That was one of our battalion chiefs, Chief McCabe. He sort of stole my thunder on some of these, but he far outranks me, so we'll let that go. But I wanted to give you all an example of some of the things we take a look at when deciding whether or not to recommend an evacuation due to a wildfire. So you can see these up here. Chief McCabe talked about them in the video, but this is not everything, but these are a lot of the commonly used variables that our crews will take a look at. And we can help with some of this with the data we have in the dock or in the EOC through National Weather Service or dashboards, things that we're taking a look at as well to feed back into the tactical side. But really the boots on the ground have the best ability to evaluate these factors. So you can see wind speed and direction. And let me stop. Some of these are controllable, some aren't, and it's really important to know that, right? So as Chief McCabe talked about, we understand the topography, the highways, the terrain of our jurisdiction. We understand that incredibly well, but there are things that we cannot control, and those are the things that need to be built into that assessment with the controllable factors, right? So wind speed and direction, fire behavior, rate of spread, proximity to structures, and then again, natural or structural breaks, such as highways, waterways, terrain, et cetera, like we talked about with 287 there, and that being a break, and if it were to surpass that, then we're getting into that contingency piece, so that was a factor. It's important to understand that evacuation decisions are not based on a single factor, right? This is a continuous real-time assessment of what's going on, right? So it's not we get on scene and immediately we make that decision. That could happen, but things are changing rapidly. So our crews are trained to and experts in doing a continuous assessment. As conditions change, that threat level may change with it, right? So you may see some areas, whether they're in City and County of Broomfield, Boulder County, Jefferson County, some may be under evacuation orders, some may be under evacuation warnings, some may be just looking at the advisory going, this isn't impacting me, but I want to know what's going on. And those can change. So that's why it's important for you all to be aware of those vetted and reliable sources of information that Clay was talking about, and we'll continue to expand upon that are going to be coming out from CCOB or City and County of Broomfield. Regardless of the evaluation, the time, all of that, the goal is always the same when we look at life safety. We need to get people out of harm's way early enough to do so safely while avoiding unnecessary evacuation when the risk doesn't justify it. Looking back at January 5th, based on that continuous assessment, the threat level never reached the point where evacuations were necessary within the city and county of Broomfield. And I hope you saw that exemplified in Chief O'Leary, Lieutenant Castanway's description of the event. This decision was made intentionally. It was based on safety, right? Evacuation should only be ordered when that risk to the public is greater than the risk created by moving large numbers of people all at once. Think about all of you and your neighbors and surrounding communities trying to get out of your neighborhood rapidly, and other members of your community who may have pets or children or family members who are immobile trying to get back in. That creates a lot of chaos. This isn't an easy decision, right? So it does need to be intentional, but will always be based on life safety. That January 5th fire was identified and attacked very quickly, right? Crews were able to stop that forward progress in under 40 minutes, and command remained confident through their knowledge, skills, and abilities that the fire was not going to escalate to a level that threatened community safety, okay? Hopefully we've said that enough here. We want you to understand that should it we have mechanisms in place, and Clay will talk a little bit more about that, but this fire in particular, based on our assessment, never reached that need. If we were to issue an evacuation, what does that mean? An evacuation is a critical safety incident, okay? It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It usually happens in response to another primary complex incident occurring. They are an important life safety tool. Evacuations are critically important, but we have to recognize they also trigger, again, like I said, a complex secondary set of operations. So that has to be factored into the decision making. We have to then look at traffic control and road management, area security access control. There may be door-to-door rolling notifications that are happening. We need resources to be able to do that. Obviously, there are dispatch implications, so our 911 system, oftentimes already overloaded, that load increases when we issue an evacuation. And then there's managing evacuation routes, and as Clay mentioned, the sheltering operations. So this decision, while it needs to be intentional, be made quickly, has to take into those factors into account. Again, because that forward progress in the January 5th fire was quick and didn't pose a growing threat to the community, it was determined, based upon our crew's recommendation to City and County of Broomfield, that a secondary operation was not necessary, and that the resources that we had on scene that you saw in that graphic needed to remain staged to support that immediate response. We needed to get people off of the roads that were right there in the immediate risk area, and then we needed to keep people in place to do fire suppression and manage ongoing traffic needs. Not evacuating in this incident was a deliberate safety-based decision. It was not an oversight or any kind of delay that happened. Again, incidents all look different, but when we're talking about January 5th, hopefully that gives you some insight into how that decision-making process went and what we as a collective have to put into consideration when we look at issuing any kind of evacuation. All right. What we heard from the community, which makes a ton of sense, is there was some confusion about the notifications that were received. Without getting too emergency management lingo technical on everybody here, I do want to explain one of the reasons some of you may have received alerts living in the City and County of Broomfield, but you may have received alerts on your cell phone that were coming from Boulder County. So there is a system at the federal level placed under the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, called IPAWS, and that is Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. That is accessible to anybody in the nation, obviously first responder, dispatch entities, offices of emergency management, not any citizen, but those designated agencies have access to this. It uses different modalities to get messages out rapidly to community members. We're going to talk about the cell phone component, but this is also if you've ever, although with streaming it's a little different, but seeing your TV turn on to an emergency alert notification or emergency alert broadcast, that type of thing, or your radio is overtaken by an emergency alert, same system, we're going to talk about cell phones because that is what's primarily utilized right now in our communities. So alerts through iPods are sent through dispatch. So these came through Boulder County Dispatch, the ones you received from Boulder, to cell towers in a defined area. So what happened was Boulder drew, this is just an example, basically a red polygon, picked areas of their jurisdiction that they determined based on those variables we talked about were potentially at risk and needed to evacuate. Any cell phone that is connected to the towers within this red box in our example here, any cell phones connected to those towers are going to receive the alert. So if I am here, I live here, okay, I'm outside of the direct impact zone of the red box, but my phone is connected to this cell tower, which is inside the box. I'm gonna get that alert. Call that bleed over, okay? That's still going to come to me because the cell phone can't delineate necessarily where the box is drawn, they just pull the towers. Does that make sense? Ish, okay. So I'm living down here in a different county potentially, but I'm getting hit with a notification. These notifications you do not need to sign up for, unlike Lookout Alert, which Clay will talk about. They are automatic. If your cell phone's connected, you'll get the alert. That's what they look like. You've probably seen them for like Amber Alerts and other kinds of things. That's just an example out of LA County about what those look like. The intent with iPods is that it is awareness supersedes precision. Okay? So we would rather, and we meaning a collective, almost as a nation, would rather folks get the awareness that something is happening around them than making sure that, like, if you're right on this line, you're not getting it. They're just gonna go for the awareness of the whole system, and if you're close, you're gonna get it. That's not going to change. This is a federal system. It's been around a long time. It's gonna continue to work the same way it always has. So you may receive an alert even if you're not near an affected area. You are near, an affected area, but you're not within it. That creates confusion, but how do we change that into a positive? So the tools we talked about, personal safety, use it for a situational awareness tool. If you get this and you go, I live in Broomfield, but I'm getting this and I don't live in Boulder County, chances are you're close to something happening. So use it as a prompt to start to go to those sites that are vetted and secured and safe and have reliable information to find out what's going on. Use it as a heads up. Something may be evolving quickly. I may need to get ready, right? So yes, it may cause confusion, but flip it. Use it as a way to stay informed and be ready to support your family, your friends, your neighbors. Something probably close to you is happening, all right? Okay, I'm gonna pass this along to our next round of speakers. Chief Empelman.
Hello, everyone. Wow, take a breath. That was a lot of information. Thank you, Michelle. So a lot of what I'm going to share tonight is you've heard. We know that even if you just smell smoke, if you see something, it's very, very concerning. So what we want to tell you is during an emergency incident such as this, it's going to look very different than what we had recently, for example, at Anthem, where we did a police notification. So I want us to make sure that we all understand that what we're talking about tonight is when we have multi-jurisdictional incident, including the fire department and someone else. So I wanted to make sure just to differentiate those, because from the police department, if we did just a police incident, it would look very different, and we would just go through those regular social media sites that we use. So I just want to make sure to share that. So besides communication, you've heard this throughout the evening by the lieutenant and the chiefs and Clay, but everyone needs to understand what is needed to be prepared. If you don't feel safe, I'm going to say it again, if you see flames, if you see smoke, if you see fire, do not wait for us to send you this notification. Do not wait for the iPause to alert or even the Lookout Alert that we use here in Broomfield. Evacuate yourself. Leave the situation immediately and don't wait for us to notify you. Just make sure that you are safe. So I want to really stress that. So things to know when you do evacuate. Prior to an emergency, these are a few things that would be helpful. Get to know and talk with your neighbors. Talking to the ladies here in the front who live at Anthem Ranch, they were telling me how great they do at communicating and knowing who their neighbors are. Get to know your neighbors. That'll help you during an emergency. If you know that Bob lives alone, Bob might need some help. So talk to each other and get to know each other. Pre-record the inside and the outside of your home before the emergency happens, prior to that emergency. The go bag is essential, and build that ahead of time. The important documents, the medications for you or your pet, the chargers, create a list of that, what needs to be on there. I can tell you at our house, we have a safe in the basement, and there's a luggage sitting next to it, and we've told our kids, something happens, open the safe, throw everything in there, ready to go. Upstairs, a go bag, and if you can't get to it, leave it. But if you can get a go bag, think about what needs to be in there. We told our kiddos the suitcase because it's easier to carry, right? It's got the wheels if you needed to. So think about what that looks like. Any needs for your pets and special needs for family members that you may have. And I know Clay mentioned this, but those evacuation locations and routes, think about multiple ways to get out. You know, I've been an officer for 30 years, and I think of the years when I used to direct traffic, and we would close US 36, and people would be completely lost. Now, granted, we have GPS, but your phone may not always work in a situation like that, but think about the other way to go. I remember doing a community event after the Marshall Fire, and one of the questions was, there was nowhere else to go because this one street had a little chain that said no trespassing. What I would tell you is you drive right through it. If you can get out, right? So think about every direction that you can go so that you get out safely. So think about all those things when you're making that idea with your family. Think about the drives ahead of time. And think about who's going to be in your car. Try to take one car, because when you have these situations, you can lose service, and you won't be able to communicate. The traffic will be bottlenecked, the cell phone towers will get overloaded, absolutely, and when your phones don't work, people panic, especially this day and age. So think about what that looks like for you and your family members, and have that plan ahead of time. Clay, I think you mentioned the garage. Know how to disconnect the garage so that you can't open it if your electricity goes out, or you just can't open your garage. So have those ideas as well. And then think about where you're going. Have a plan. Where are we going if we leave? If Jimmy's at school and I'm here and we know that Jimmy can't come here and my cell phone does not work, where are we meeting? I mean, we have a plan at our house. We're meeting at Grandma's house. We live up north, Grandma lives south. It may take you a while, but we know if we can't communicate, that's where we're going. So at least have that ahead of time. And think about also the mobility needs for a family member. Where you're going, can they accommodate pets? So plan. That's going to be what you hear today, besides the January 5th incident and then the fire, the importance of all the fire mitigation information and all this. But think about how critical it is for you to plan so that if it happens, you're prepared, because it will go so much more smooth if you do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I know some of you, if you would have known I was speaking this much, you wouldn't have come tonight, so thank you for staying. What I do want to talk about now, along with that line of preparedness, is Lookout Alert. How many of you are signed up with Lookout Alert currently? Good deal. I see some hands not up, so if we can get you signed up on Lookout Alert tonight, that's a big win for us. Because Lookout Alert is really our platform where you can receive a text, an email, or a phone call telling you about a situation. How many of you got the red flag alert on Lookout Alert today? Good. So that's the importance of it. We're all getting the same message. We all understand that the next couple days are going to be kind of some critical fire weather because of the red flag conditions. That's what Lookout Alert does. The platform, don't get confused about it, because the platform is actually called Smart 911 when you sign up. And I know that creates a little bit of confusion, but on that Smart 911, Lookout Alert, they're synonymous. They're the same things, okay? The nice thing about Smart 911, though, as you go in there and you sign up, I hope some of you did this, you could put things in there like if you have a pet, any medications that you have. You can add things like that into the Smart 911 system. So you can put a lot of information in there. And I'd really encourage you to take advantage of that. And if you haven't been in your system for a while, go back in there and check your profile and make sure that your profile is updated to your current conditions. But Lookout Alert is extremely important. Please sign up for it if you're not already signed up, because you're only going to get those texts emails and phone calls if you signed up to get them. A couple weeks ago, I sat with an individual who said, man, my system's not working, can't figure it out. We sat for about 45 minutes. We figured out that the password had been, she kind of forgot her password, so we had to reset the password. But then we got in there, and then as we started going through it, I'm like, well, you live alone, right? She said, yes. I said, okay, who do you want to notify? Because there's a spot in there for that as well. You could put a family member in there who can be called or an additional phone number. So it's really a great tool. Please, please, please sign up for it. Dave Halen, who's part of the emergency management team, is just dying to sign people up for Lookout Alert. He'll be out the front afterwards at the table, so please see Dave before you go. If you're in a hurry and you need to leave, just grab a card. We have some cards up front that you can do it. It's got a QR code on it. You can look at that QR code to sign up, or you can go on our website and sign up as well. Really important. Please do that. In addition to that, we have other jurisdictions and counties around us that don't use Lookout Alert. I know it kind of seems intuitive that we would all be on one system, but unfortunately we're not. Everybody kind of has their own system. So there's Lookout Alert, there's Code Red, there's BOCO Alert in Boulder County. If you live close to the boundary of Boulder County, we would also encourage you to sign up for Boulder County's alert. And as well, if you're in Adams or Weld, to sign up for Code Red. So it's okay, just understand that you might be getting different notifications, but at least you're getting that awareness that, to Michelle's point, you know that something's going on, something's heading your direction. In addition to that, we're continuing to update our emergency preparedness pages. So within the last couple years, Julie with our comms team, she's sitting in front doing such a wonderful job helping us out tonight. Her and her team have been amazing to help us really restructure this page and really make it more user-friendly. So as you look at this page right here, it's called broomfield.org/wildfire. It really goes over what it means to you to get signed up with the notifications, where you can find reliable information. You click on that icon, you'll get things that say where you can plan, prepare, prevent, and then on the final one is talking about evacuations. And again, that's going to really talk about having that plan and making sure you're evacuating. This is all on our website. This is great information to have. It's a great tool that's been developed for you so that you've got that opportunity. If we're not here, you have questions, or you're like, hey, I need to build a plan, you can go to the site and find those resources. In addition, if you see up there on the right, this Wildfire Emergency Response and Preparedness Community Town Hall, the information is going to be posted there after we're done. So if there's something you want to go back and hear again, that information is going to be right up there on that website. To continue that, talking about wildfire preparedness, again, plan and prepare, and then prevention. If you see the picture that we have here on the left, or on my left, that kind of shows some of the prevention tactics that we do throughout the city and county on our city and county-owned property. This area is what we call a mow ban that we will do behind properties that are CCOB owned on our property, behind homes where CCOB owns the property. We also will mow along trails. We mow both sides of the trail, about a 6-foot mow ban on each side of the trail. So if you think about this, if you go back to the Firewise stuff, and then you're talking about the 5 feet behind the house, 10 feet behind the house, 25 feet behind the house, what we're trying to do is help create that defensible space. So when the fire department shows up and we've got a 25-foot mow ban already in place, they can say, okay, here's a great place for us to start attacking this fire and start burning it back even more. Behind some of the homes, you'll see a bigger area. So at the end of the growing season, which is somewhere around, I don't know, depends anymore, but typically it's around September, October, on the western edge of CCOB property behind homes, we'll mow up to a 50-foot wide swath. And that's because those grasses are starting to dry at that point in time. And so we want to make that defensible space even a little bit longer or a little bit bigger. So you'll see that in some of your neighborhoods. Some people, we can't mow that far behind your house because of the topography. Our equipment just can't get back there. But there are times where we will send in contractors to do handwork. We did that just recently behind some homes in the Outlook area where there was a pretty significant fuel load behind those homes, pretty small area between us and Boulder County's line. But we went in and had our crews go ahead and reduce and mitigate that fuel load back there. And this is a really neat page that we've recently done. This is what to expect. This is a great opportunity for you ahead of time to say what's going to happen within those first 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, 10 to 30 minutes of the response, so that you're aware that things are occurring and what those things are. So in the first 10 minutes of response, things like first responders are dispatched and arriving on scene. Fire department assessment on fire behavior and speed, weather conditions, proximity to homes and structures, natural structural breaks. Kind of gives you an idea that within those first 10 minutes that things are happening, and I know it feels very anxious to us when we're seeing the smoke, but we don't know exactly what's going on, realize that something is occurring. And as we mentioned earlier, within our structure and our system of communicating, we're notifying everybody. We're talking with each other, between the police department, the fire department, my team, along with the city manager's office. In addition to that, we're also talking to our other partners if it's a cross-jurisdictional issue. So on the January 5th one, that would have been Boulder County. We were talking with Boulder County as well. A lot of conversations going on to make sure we all understand the extent and where the current conditions lie. If you get that alert, again, like I said, I can't emphasize enough to look at it, understand if it's a warning or evacuation. And if it's a warning, you've got a little bit of time, but if it's an evacuation, it's a gotta-go time. Don't spend a lot of time trying to collect things. That's the time where you've just gotta move. And there might be an instance where we do have a situation that's moving rapidly and you won't get a warning. You'll just get an order. Again, that's why the pre-planning is so important, to make sure you have all those other things in place before that would occur. Once we do have something that we are determining is a significant incident, we're going to list that on our incident page. You're going to get a notification, you're going to see a banner with that, and you're going to see an area where you to go for that trusted source of what's going on. So back to what Michelle talked about, the iPods, you get a little bleed over because of where it's coming off the towers. This is where you can say, excuse me, where you can jump on look at our incident page and say, okay, what's actually happening right now? And that information will be up there. And it'll tell you that, do we have evacuation warnings up? Do we have orders up? Is the situation, hopefully as it moves on, when the situation is contained, those things will be listed up there. Excuse me. And again, here's our Alert Center web banner. This is really cool too. When something happens, like level 1 fire restrictions, we're actually in level 2 right now. The level 2 fire restrictions are up there on the fire restrictions banner. And then you see Broomfield is under a drought watch. Those are things that are currently on our screen or on our banner. If there was something additional going on, like we have a big incident, a wildfire, flood, those type of things, you're again going to see those across the top of the page. And you'll have the emergency status page down here to show you what is going on, where you can click on and look to see real time, if you will, what that incident looks like. And here's how you can sign up for it. This is really cool. So I had somebody not too long ago, excuse me 1 second. What's that? I had somebody say, what if I don't have Lookout Alert? What if I don't want to do Lookout Alert? Which I would highly encourage you to do that, but I understand some people get worried about that. You can also sign up for notifications on our website. So you can go in, click on the notify, sign in, click on the notify me, and then you can select what you want to hear about across the city and county. You might want to hear about more than one thing. You might want to hear about the Great American Picnic or Broomfield Days. But you can also click on, I want to just know about fire alerts and restrictions. So that's an option for you if you don't want to do Lookout Alert. In addition to that, you can follow us on social media if you have social media. So all the social media pages are going to be linked up when we have an event occurs. So whether you go to our Facebook, Broomfield's Facebook, Broomfield PD, North Metro Fire's Facebook, Twitter, Broomfield PD Twitter, North Metro Fire, PIO Twitter. When we have a large event, again, our PIOs are all talking together. They're putting out the message. They're sharing the message so that it's the same information that's going out. So make sure you bookmark those and you're ready to use them. All right. I think we're at the end of the actual presentation. So Julie's rushing up here. Thank you. House lights are up. I think we're ready to start taking questions. If people have questions, just please remember to come down to the microphones. And you have all this wonderful subject matter expertise in front of you to answer, hopefully, the questions that you have. And if we can't, we'll find the answers.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Christy. I sent a list of my questions ahead of time. Thank you very much for answering most of them. My one is, do we have any updates to our landscaping code to make sure that people know how much rock and how much xeriscape, how much water-wise we need to do? And my second question would be, is there a way that we can please reduce the number of notifications we need to sign up for? So that way it's just one. So I get it from the county, or I get it from the city, or I get it from the state. Is there some way we can unify Adams and Boulder and Broomfield and Weld? Thank you.
So I'll answer the notification question. We can't get down to one notification. That's really up to your personal preference. That's why we give you a lot of different options, and you get to choose the notifications that you get. Our recommendation is to sign up for as many as you can. If you're truly worried about it, you want to make sure you get all the information that you need to respond appropriately to an event. But really, it's up to you. So you get to pick and choose what notifications you get and how you receive those. The only ones you don't get to pick and choose are the iPods, because that comes off the federal system. On the Wildfire code,
Why don't we use the same one as Weld in Boulder County and all of that? That was part of the question.
oh, sorry. Yeah, everybody kind of has their own system, and that's it is kind of a pitfall, if you will, of emergency notification systems. We are in alignment with Jefferson County, so us in Jefferson County use Lookout Alert or the Smart 911 system, but everybody kind of gets the opportunity to choose what notification systems they have. That's why if you live close to that border between Boulder and Broomfield, and you want to make sure you understand what's going on in Boulder, you might want to sign up for both. So, code question? You were asking about.
I'm going to be loud. If we have updates to our landscaping code, that would say what type of things, where, and then what percentage a homeowner or city would need to have. I don't want to see a rock and replace. I want to see pollinator stuff. How can we make sure that we're being both water-wise, pollinator-wise, and fire-wise all at the same time?
Sure, you bet. The resident wants D, all of the above. So how do we have a code that includes the best fire suppression, pollinator districts, and water-wise, planting and landscaping? We continue to see through the filter of doing D. I can tell you that without kind of having a unicorn approach, it really is the various pressures for each of those three. So to what degree do we pull those levers, and how far do we pull those levers down? So what we do know right now on the Water Watch, and all indications are that we will be moving into some type of water restrictions, which is past the watch. That will really set a precedence over having codes that say, let's have a pollinator district rather than what those individual shrubberies or landscaping may look like. So we continue to update the code. We continue to be mindful of sustainability, and we know that all three of those are important to our residents. So we continue to be mindful as we implement each one of those. Thanks for the question.
We'll go back and forth if that's okay, ma'am.
Hi, Bonnie Guthrie from Anthem Ranch. I moved here from Summit County, where I was a volunteer with animal control, to be a small animal rescuer in the event of a wildfire. And I also volunteered to follow these kind of fire department talks, and then I would hand out brochures on everything you needed for your pet's rescue box, and the dispatch number that was operational only for a wildfire. So because with pre-evacuation, a homeowner was not allowed back in, but they could call, and then we could go in and rescue their pets. And I don't even know, does Broomfield have animal control? Has anything been set up for pets when the people aren't there?
Yes, ma'am, we do have animal control on, and so we have a supervisor that's in charge, as well as all the way up to a commander who oversees them. So yes, we do have that opportunity for animal control to assist.
Okay, but is there an announcement or anything, 'cause
We would
people-
use everything we've talked about today to get that communication out.
Great, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And Clay, do you want to mention just really quickly on the, so for our evacuation sites and shelters, we've had a lot of conversation about pets. And one of the things that we've learned from the Marshall Fire is that re-accessing after the fact is extremely difficult and full of anxiety for families to be going back in or sending a team to go back in. Clay, do our evacuation centers accept pets?
Yeah, so if, during the Marshall Fire, if anybody was evacuated and went to the First Bank Center, we had everything there. I think we had some birds, we had some cats, we had some dogs. So we do prepare for that, and we do have some areas where we could, for the smaller animals. The concern, obviously, that we have is for larger animals, horses, things like that. We would have to reach outside resources to come help us take care of those type of animals. But yes, most of the time at the shelter or at the evacuation site, we're going to let you bring those animals in initially.
Mine's more of some feedback and maybe a question. I would strongly encourage things like this to have a sign language interpreter and open captioning. I think that you're completely forgetting the disability community in a lot of this work, and that's 25% of the population. And so the website that you're referring people to is not accessible to the blind. The videos from North Metro don't have closed captions on them. I recognize that it's all a work in progress, but I think it's something to be aware of, because if you're not prepared at these events, then you're certainly not going to be prepared when your deaf people and your people with mobility issues, people on certain medications show up to the shelters and need a refrigerator or need an accessible restroom, then you're not going to know what to do. So I think that having this accessible across the board, as well as on your websites, from the fire district to everywhere else, is critically important, and I can see that it's missing at this point. So I just wanted to give some general feedback for that population. I know in Northmore Estates, there's an entire community going in that they plan on housing adults with disabilities, and I have a major concern that if there is a wildfire, what are we gonna do with those residents who probably don't know how to evacuate safely or don't have a way to evacuate safely, and although they might have family close by, they're not gonna be able to get into the neighborhood to evacuate them. So do you have a plan for those residents as well, once they're in the neighborhood and don't necessarily have the same skills that other individuals have?
We appreciate that very much. And,
Yeah.
and I don't even want to say we would take it under advisement. We will modify. You're absolutely right.
And if we get those communities also to sign up for Smart 911 or their families to assist them with that. That information can go in there. We do have an access and functional needs that, system that we work on, but there's always opportunity to improve it without a doubt. Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank you for putting this on. This has been a very good presentation. So, for both North Metro Fire and City of Broomfield, great job. My name is Joe Armstrong. My wife and I are new residents to Broomfield. Thank you. And I don't have questions, but I would like to relay an experience that I had that was less than what I expected, and the learnings I found that came from it, because the things I found were not addressed in your presentation. So with your permission, I'll tell my little story and the learnings. Okay. We recently purchased a home in Gayton Green, 30-year-old house. In the middle of the night before our closing, we got an email from the insurance carrier, and they advised that they were going to do an exterior inspection that was required before our house was fully insured. Didn't pay any attention to that other than say, oh, they're going to come out and look at it. Approximately 2 weeks later, we were advised by the carrier that the house was in a wildfire designated area and that had to be fully covered. We needed to make extensive modifications to the landscaping around the house. And they specifically put in up to 1,000 feet. Okay? I'm normally a pretty laid-back guy, but after my wife peeled me off the ceiling, I started researching it. And I reached out, I looked on the web, I Googled wildfire designated area, and can you guess how many hits Google found for wildlife designated area? 0. I don't know how often you see things in Google that come up with no hits, but that was one. My next experience was to call North Metro Fire to try and get some information. They finally patched me into fire prevention, and the associate I talked to there, and I explained the situation, said, that's interesting. This is the second call I've had this week. The other one was from Anthem. Some other homeowner had a similar experience with an insurance company. So, from that, I tried the North Metro Fire website, I tried the City of County Broomfield website. I could not find anything. And ultimately, there's a place on the website where you can ask staff a question. And I asked the question, and within 2 hours, I got a response from a person who said, yeah, we know about that. And I'll get into that in just a minute. So here are my learnings. I have learned that there are some insurance carriers that are currently utilizing wildfire designated area labels to reassess properties across the region. They're made up. The designations appears to be constructed by the insurance companies themselves. They are considered private and confidential, meaning they don't tell you what's included, they don't show you on the map anything that goes along with it. I think that's a problem. I think for a community like Broomfield, where we have this urban wildfire interface, at least there ought to be some knowledge about what the insurance companies are doing for the benefit of the residents. It does not appear that North Metro Fire or City and County of Broomfield are making the information available easily. The lady I talked to got the response back from the, I didn't write this down, from the city said, yeah, we know about it, but that was about it. And I had terrible time could not find anything on the city website. And I'm pretty good at computers. And so one of the suggestions is, you've got it right here, Broomfield.org/wildfire. Get that on the main page where people can click on it and go to it without having to navigate multiple menus to get to things. The Colorado State Forest Service has created an online risk viewer that goes down to the street address level. Has maps, you can look by county, and you can look at your individual home address. In mine, the record The record said fire intensity was lowest. This location only has a minimal chance of being directly impacted by a wildfire. And so again, we've talked about communication and accessibility. And then I found that neighboring communities, specifically Louisville and Boulder, have taken some steps to ban junipers as new plantings because junipers contain volatile resins that ignite easier and burn harder than many other types of vegetation. I didn't know that. And part of the issue with my house, 30 years old, is that the previous owner put a lot of junipers right in that 5-foot space that we're responsible for around our houses. Oh, and by the way, I did change my insurance carrier. So anyway, I think there are opportunities for better communication, right directly to this. I think there needs to be better awareness of what the insurance companies are doing. There may be some need for state legislation or city ordinances with certain types of things related to things like the plants that are allowed. So thank you very much.
Welcome to Broomfield, and thanks very much, so noted.
It's not new. I've been around here for 60 years. We just haven't lived in Broomfield.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, Tom Swinson. We live in Skystone, and it's the western perimeter. And so a question probably for the fire guys. Your thoughts, we've had some concerns from residents about the mowback and what happens with the mowed material that sits there. I think it's probably particularly concerning when we don't have moisture and whatever goes through the natural decay and degradation. But that foliage or that fuel is cut, but it's still lying there on the ground. So, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I'll definitely talk to my team about that. We typically do not pick up mow clippings, but we'll check to see if there's some other way we can mitigate some of that.
Check. Okay. I just wanted to talk from a fire standpoint for Skystone specifically. I work at the firehouse right down the street from you guys. So we've been out there. You've probably seen us a bunch, in recent time. And feel very comfortable, really, with how that community's laid out. That mowing operation out there is fantastic. It gives us lots of anchoring and lots of ability to engage in fire there and protect you. It's kind of a stay-and-play environment is what we call it. So you should feel very comfortable, even with that on the ground like that. What it does is when we mow down the grass, it'll decrease the intensity of the flames, right? It'll lay them down on the ground. It allows us to go what's called direct attack on it with hand tools or with water, versus if you have grass this high, it's going to produce 2 to 3 times the size of flames, right? The intensity, we're not going to be able to go direct on that. That's something where we're even going to have to push back ourselves, re-engage once the fire hits that area, and then we can come in with hose lines and put it out. It's called a fire front following type of technique. So we've been out there a bunch. We understand what you guys are going through. There's also some natural type of breaks around your area, and you have good water in that specific area as well. So just wanted to reiterate, that grass being laying down like that is still good. I promise you. Even though it seems like fuel, it's a lot less than what's back behind it. Okay?
Hi. My name is Mo Tabrizi, and before I start asking my question, I want to give you my heartfelt appreciation for what you've done on January 5th and what you do every day. Great work. Thank you. God bless you. I live within less than a mile and a half of the site of the fire. I was sitting home, happy doing my things. A call came from a friend of us in Boulder saying, you're really close to the fire, you need to get out. And that was the first indication I had, that was the first warning we got. We're signed up for everything you guys talked about tonight. And I wish there was a warning from the city saying, there's something going on, but it's under control. We never got that. Again, thank you for all the good work you do.
Yes, that was one of our lessons. I don't want to say lessons learned, but certainly, and I think Clay went over it a little bit, that one of the first indicators now is we're going to be sending a notice. So before any action takes place, Broomfield can see smoke. We're not moving on it right now, but just that acknowledgement so that you're aware to start tracking whatever those next items are. So it is in place. In fact, we had a council, and I do want to say that our emergency management team, our staffing at our police department, our mayor, who is somewhere in the audience, she had just become mayor a month before the Marshall fires. We did not have an emergency management team. We had one person that had been our emergency manager for 20 plus years. So as we moved through the establishment of the emergency management team, as we moved through increasing staffing for our PD so that we could work in conjunction with the North Metro Fire, we continue to always be looking to do better. And communication, we know if there's a void of communication, it takes all of us off of our game. So at our focus session just recently, it was the fire that was in Golden. We could see it from the platform of where our focus session was occurring. It allowed us to implement what we had just established after the debrief on January the 5th with regards to communication. And I feel fortunate to be able to report that, again, we continue to have these opportunities to ensure that we have a format in place for swift communication, consistent communication, regardless of what alert you're signed up for, that we have that one central landing page to do just that, to notify, advise, follow up, direct, and help through the entire process. So your point is well taken, and we have made those modifications already. So thank you.
Mr. Quinn?
Yeah, Pat Quinn. I have a policy question and then specific questions on the, do we have standards that are written on, we're talking about mitigation within our homes, and that's something we all need to take a look at. But as far as the open space, it's behind our homes, which is both Boulder and Broomfield County, do we have standards on what should be cleared? Clay mentioned 50 feet. Are there generally accepted, not accounting principles, but standards, for fire mitigation? And then as a follow-up question, Clay had mentioned where you can't get in equipment, and I suspect behind my house, and I think you guys know where I live, on Cortez Court, and I suspect that you can't get equipment in there to, at least on the upslopes, and maybe you don't need to get equipment in there. There's a lot of fuel, in the valley behind our house, and what's wetlands during the wetlands season, but I presume dry lands and stuff. And I'm just, do we have plans for those areas? And do we have, let me make it a macro deal, then do we have plans throughout the city to make sure the open space is maintained based on these standards?
Thank you. I'm going to have the equipment. Chief Doherty.
Mr. Quinn, thank you for the question. The particular point of that is, do we have the equipment to be able to get back there to do the mitigation? Is that right? I want to make sure I understand that correctly. Right. No. That is not a joke, but.
Yeah. There are not national standards. about mowing and the distance to mow. What we developed after the Marshall Fire was in conjunction with North Metro. We walked spaces behind the Anthem area, talked about what it would look like to have good defensible space, and really that's what set forth our internal policy on how we mow. And that's the 6-foot swath on each side of a trail, and then behind the homes, it's a 6-foot, and then on the western edge, which is where the wind-driven events come from, that's where we're mowing up to the 50 feet after the growing season's over. So the area that you're talking about, no, we don't have a plan specifically to go in and look at that. As we come up with things, or if the fire department comes and says, hey, we saw this area, and we might need to do some fuel reduction there, we will take a team in there, we'll look at it, and we'll determine what mitigation has to occur to either thin those fuels or reduce those fuels, mitigate those fuels, and get them out of there. But that's kind of the process that we currently go through. So there's not a set plan.
And just to add on to that too, the evaluation that we do for mowing operations, we get a chance to look at these pretty frequently. We do quarterly looks. We go out and look at each area that's being mowed and really the more high-risk focus of the neighborhoods that are on the western edge, and we evaluate what does the mowing look like? What do those growth patterns look like? And then we actually provide feedback. We'll do a report on those areas from our wildland team to ensure that we can best inform the city and county of Broomfield to address those areas that do have high fuel loads, or we feel like maybe the mowing didn't keep up with the growth for that season. And then also in coordination with our wildland team and really national best practices, if there's something that does develop where we think based on the relative humidities that are going to be throughout the rest of the year or expected weather patterns, we want to cut back further, we absolutely coordinate with the city and county of Broomfield to increase the distance, which is where the 50-foot growth pattern cutback has come from. And then goats is a serious thing. If you guys are out and about in the community, you'll actually see areas where goats have come in. There's contracted companies that will bring in goats to do like a literal mow down by goats eating an area, and it's just one methodology of doing a mowing pattern. There's trade-offs to everything that can be anticipated for those things, but it's not a joke. Goats are an option.
And I think that point, it's striking that balance, right? I mean, we live here for a reason. It's a beautiful place to live. I've been in Colorado my entire life. And the more and more we grow out, the more and more we grow towards those type of areas that have that interface. So what's that balance look like? And I think some of that is just making sure that we're not taking away everything, but we're also mitigating what we can and creating that defensible space.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Aaron Hune. I live in the Outlook. First of all, thank you guys very much for the presentation, for the answers. I definitely do think it will be beneficial to have notification that you're aware of a situation and monitoring it. I had a similar experience to a previous commenter, and I think that would have gone a long way. My follow-up question to this is I do hear that there was a deliberate response not to evacuate, Outlook, Crystal Pines, Whistle Pig, and that you were in communication with Boulder County. I'm left wondering, with that communication, why the response was so disparate between what Boulder County was doing in Pony Estates versus what Broomfield was doing on the other side of Dillon without 120th Avenue to address that. Again, appreciate everything you guys have done, and thanks a bunch for your time responding to all these comments and for the efforts of the police department fighting the fire.
Yeah, I can start that, and if anybody from my team wants to jump in there too. The decision to not evacuate, right? So when Boulder County is making the decisions that they were making for evacuations in the areas that they were picking out, we were sitting in our Department of Operations Center and looking at that on the map. We can actually visibly see the areas in which they're looking to evacuate, and we're matching those things with what were being reported from the field, from our incident command, and the information we were getting from incident command about the wind pattern, wind direction, the fuel that is actually there, where it could be going, and how comfortable our crews really felt with the burn operation that was occurring, it was clear that the need to evacuate and start that second process did not match what the actual incident was showing us at that time. What Boulder County was seeing from their side and what they were deciding to do for evacuations, we weren't a part of that actual decision making. We were seeing what was occurring, but from our standpoint and what we were getting from our folks on the ground, it felt very good about the decision to not evacuate for the same reason of risk and benefit. If we do evacuate those areas, what does that cause? What are the concerns of that? And really, is there a need for that? Had there been any inkling that that fire was going to jump 287, or if there was any significance to that fuel that could have actually been there had it not been mowed down, it could have been a very different story and been a very different action. But in the circumstance with what was coming from the people that we truly trust on the ground that were feeding us information, and with what we were getting from information, it's probably a call for a wildland fire, right? But the information we were getting from the crews on the ground, it felt unnecessary and potentially risky to do an evacuation of those areas. Anybody from my team want to add to that? Yeah?
Glenn
Lieutenant Cresson.
Crum, Anthem Ranch. We have a large amount of native grass inside our community, like 50 acres. After the Marshall Fire, discussing with North Metro, we water it throughout the summer, July and August when it's dry. Doesn't need it, but it keeps it moist, hopefully to keep the fire danger down. Is that still the recommendation?
Yes.
That's all
no,
I
sorry.
needed to know.
No, I was just kidding. But right now, I mean, it's not going to do much good, right? It's already dormant and doing its thing.
Now it's mowed, so
there you go.
not
See,
a problem.
there you go. During growth season, when it's green and it has that moisture on it, it still can help, right? The more moist, the less it's going to burn. I think Chief McCabe said that in that video. So that really is a thing. It's more about what is the defensible space around your house and what's our access going to be in there. So I think it's always going to be worthwhile and taking into account what are our water restrictions and everything else of water usage.
Great,
So,
thank you.
you got it. To tap in on the question for Outlook. When you look at Outlook, we've had some fires in there before, back in the early 2000s, and done really well, right? Because it has that really good defensible space behind there. And also the fuel up there is very sparse. You know, goats are a thing, but so are prairie dogs. So we all know about that, right? So you got a lot of prairie dogs down there that keep that fuel really low, and that's part of it. And then Dealin, she mentioned about the towers, and that's why that happens. But also, you got to think, Boulder County, they engaged that fire on the backside. It's called the heel of the fire, back where Chief O'Leary was kind of saying the point of origin. When we decide to evacuate sometimes, when something is outrunning us, such as that fire was outrunning Boulder County before we got there. Okay, so on the radio it was, hey, we're not catching this, and the only place to catch it is Highway 287, if we can get units there. That's why we responded and made a stronghold where we did. So had we not been able to get out front of it, like they weren't, we would have probably done kind of the same thing, right? Because we're going, uh-oh, we can't take this head on, we can't mitigate those fuels out front. We're not gonna catch this thing till, gosh, I-25 at this point, right? So just know that those are the coordinated efforts that are going on, and that unified command, that's how that communication goes back and forth. So when you saw those command vehicles up there, that's what they're talking about back and forth. Hey, what do you got on the heel of the fire in Division Alpha? What do you guys have in Division Echo on the front of the fire? And then when we get that communication in place, that's where we make our stronghold or where we escalate. Good? Okay.
Of the time. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, but we have a 4-part question over here. But my workout partner, right here, Ms. Fletcher, please.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fletcher, Wilcox Estates. My question here, and maybe it's just a planning and thing that maybe you haven't thought of, maybe you have. And it's with all of the ponds and stuff around town and everything that I presume you throw a hose in the thing and pump the water out to refill those small size and medium sized trucks and stuff. This time of year, they're always pushed down, they're drained out, they're at a very low point. I would like Broomfield to talk to some of these cities, some of these counties, Broomfield across areas, leave them a little fuller, especially with this year. We may not get the amount of moisture coming out of the mountains. Perhaps we can talk to folks and they can figure out what they'd be comfortable with leaving the height of those areas a little, those ponds and stuff, fuller, so that they could be pumped out and used. Because had this gone bad, thank goodness the little irrigation to the north off 160th, or just a little south of there, that's full now again, and that's a pretty big thing that you could pump out of. But the travel time and stuff, so maybe we can keep these smaller ones a little fuller and stuff, and thought about
Thank
that.
you very much. We'll take that under advisement.
Thank you, guys.
Ms. Jewell?
Okay. This is actually for CCOB. The old neighborhoods all have kind of north, south, east, west streets. They're in and out. You have easy access. The newer neighborhoods are, a lot of times, are one way in and one way out. That was a big problem at Superior, which was behind Costco. They literally had one way in and one way out, and those houses burned to the ground. It was extremely hot. If CCOB can, in the future, I know we don't have much growing space left, but if they can regulate, we need at least 2 ways into a large neighborhood. We have too many neighborhoods right now. I travel around, I work with the telephone company outside. I know these neighborhoods. They are locked in. My own house is locked in. They were going to take away the walkway that went out into the open space, and I fought it for years, and now they're left it alone so far. But the idea is don't allow the developers to lock in neighborhoods. This does not help our fire department, and this kills people. Thank you.
And we agree. Part of the partnership with North Metro Fire and CCOB, I can think of Chief Doherty, 3 recent conversations while we are pursuing resident-driven density. Oftentimes, density has to come with access that our fire department and access and the length and the size of the streets and access for emergency vehicles. And how do you counter, excuse me, is there a prioritization between traffic mitigation, trying to appease developers, and your point is well taken, Ms. Jewell, and one that the default is what is best for North Metro Fire. Yes, sir.
Hello, Stephen Hatfield, Lackamore neighborhood. I just want to give a big shout out to Jean Lim. She walked her door looking for votes. I met her for the very first time, told her about some grass in my area down there. She came out, looked at it, had made sure that the grass was cut and got taken care of. Met her again. She reminded me of this wonderful meeting today. Thank you for the great community. My question to you is this: technology, drones, does the department have, I haven't heard that talked about. What I'm hearing, that's first eyes, and that's what you want to see eyes. And tell me, is there a shortfall in the budget? What can we do as a community to make sure you have the equipment and also interoperability? Because what I'm hearing, Boulder County may be overreacted. You all took the right information and you made the right decision. So it doesn't sound like that's interoperability when you got one agency make one decision, and you guys didn't do that. So anyway, thank you for everything. And Jean, great job. She's not listening. But
yeah.
Thanks. I'm going to real quick talk about the interoperability, and thank you for that. We have been on a journey, I think the last 4 months, 5 months, as a region, and when I say region, it's really been El Paso County up to Laramie County, coming together to talk about several things: alert and warning, evacuation, and response capability. And the rooms are always 150-ish people to talk about these things, and one of those big conversations always is that interoperability and increasing communication. And so I think we're we as emergency managers and as fire personnel and police personnel are doing a much better job about saying, okay, we get it. I mean, we wish that Boulder would stop fires at their county line, but it's probably not possible. So what's it going to look like, and how do we make sure that we're getting the same information that they're getting? With that said, I'm not going to say that they did the wrong thing, because the first guy on scene from Boulder felt like that was the right thing to do. Just as our teams got on and assessed the conditions, it felt like, and they, from the subject matter experts that were there, were saying, hey, it looks like we've got this. We don't need to do it. So, and that's going to happen sometimes. I mean, we might even run into that where we pull the trigger too fast on an evacuation also at one point in time. But it's always, you know, it's hindsight's always 20/20, and after action and talking with our partners and having these continual discussions and doing it as a region where we're all talking about what that looks like to respond to these type of events. So I appreciate that question about interoperability.
Let's trade. I was going to add, we actually had that discussion. We actually have drones at the police department. We have a team of actual FAA instructors at the police department. We have several drones. The fire chief and I that day did discuss utilizing the drone, and because of the smoke is why we did not.
Hi, I have a question about the iPause. When the January 5th fire occurred, I was down in Old Town, Arvada, coming north on 285, and I sometimes go home on Midway, and I sometimes go home on Dillon, just kind of depending on things. And they sent out a broadcast. Does it affect people if you're moving into it? In other words, when it first goes out, I'm making up a number, at 1 o'clock, and I didn't happen to be anywhere near it, but if I'm driving north on Wadsworth, the towers would catch me? Is that how that works? Or is it a one-off thing?
It would have caught you, depending on where, if you remember that slide that Michelle Dillon had up, and it had almost like a
Right.
box. So if you are driving through
Into it.
if you're in that zone, when the alert goes off, you will get that alert.
And I'm assuming then there is some sort of related thing that will update saying the alert is over, stand down, whatever.
Only if you're back in that zone, because
Okay.
remember, it's activated by your the cell towers.
Okay, so I turn east and I've left the area. I won't get a notice from that system that it has turned down.
You may not,
I mean,
correct.
okay, and I get that, but it wasn't very clear to me in terms of that. In Broomfield County, I've lived here for about 20 years before we became a county. We're never far from the surrounding counties, and so it just makes sense to be aware of what they're doing, and I frequently am in a surrounding county. The other question is, thanks for all these answers, but if we have questions about this, is there a place on the website under /wildfire that we can post questions, or is there contact information that, if I have it, at least kind of gives me a sense, and it's not covered in the QA, that I can reach out to somebody and ask some questions that are related to topics covered here tonight? Is there contact links?
Absolutely. So feel free to go on the emergency management page. My email's on there. Feel free to write me, and if I can't answer the question, I'll disseminate it out and we'll get an answer back to you. And we'll add it to the FAQ.
We'll add it to
The FAQs. We'll add it to the FAQs.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to have one more question because you are just standing right there in front of me.
I'll try to be quick. Keith Mosley, Brandywine. So what happens if this fire happens at night? The grid is de-energized, the cell phone towers are down. Is there a comms pace plan with the public? Because like, how would we know? Would we go to radio after that? Not all the cell phone towers are on backups, from what I can tell. When they de-energized in my hood, it just went down. So how would we get the evac notice?
I mean, I can certainly speak to a couple pieces of that. The Marshall Fire is a really good example of a circumstance where not much was working that day, right? Our phones were overburdened. We couldn't actually make phone calls out. our radios, our actual firefighter radios were overburdened. We couldn't actually communicate out. The way that those evacuations were happening in the neighborhoods, especially as I was driving through the same ones, was literally police officers driving through neighborhoods with a bullhorn, using communication over a loudspeaker, or fire officers at the same time going door to door, knocking on doors. So when we recognize that the typical thing is not actually occurring, we're aware of it because we're probably experiencing very similar circumstances. We're being made aware of it by dispatch, and then we do have alternate plans for it, be it a redundancy communication for us on radios using a different system or a different type of radio, or going literally to an old-fashioned door-to-door knock.
I'm so glad you came and asked that last question. That is a really great one to end on, and it's going old school, which is always the reliable method. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you all so much.